Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Tomorrow on the show, Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid on science versus tradition when it comes to moon gazing in the end of Ramadan. We bumped him to Tuesday. And we'll talk with Chelsea Gazzillo, American Farmland Trust's New England policy manager, about preserving farmland in the 413, plus a preview of the Native Tongues tribute happening at White Lion in Springfield this weekend with Damani Gordon from Genuine Culture, LLC.
This past weekend, as part of the UMass Bach Festival, the UMass Fine Arts Center collaborated with the Asian and Asian American Arts and Culture program to invite 3 prominent new voices in classical, asking them to create new work as well as celebrate the festival's namesake. We're joined by Vijay Iyer, Texu Kim, and Hyeyung Sol Yoon, all of whom are making waves in music and beyond. Thank you so much, each of you, for joining us in this very tight crunch of time.
My pleasure.
Nice to be here. Yeah.
So what are any of your connections to Bach? Why did you decide to be a part of the Bach Festival?
Well, I'm going to be playing some Bach for the concert. And I'm going to be sharing the Adagio and the Fugue from Sonata number 3 in C major. And Bach wrote 6 sonatas and partitas for solo violin. And they're sort of the pieces that, violinists learns from their, very young age. And it's kind of like these pieces kind of develop alongside a violinist's life. So these are, pieces that I've learned and loved and studied for a very, very long time. And I'm going to be sharing just 2 movements, but the fugue that I'm going to be sharing, it's actually one of the more kind of monumental works that Bach wrote for solo violin. So I'm very excited to share that. There are very many opportunities to share a work like that. So I'm really, really excited. And Texu, I asked him to write a piece to accompany it and to converse with it. And he literally kind of wrote these pieces to be interspersed in the fugue and in the performance. So it'll be an interesting experience for me to perform and also hopefully for people to listen to. So I'm excited about that.
Hyeyung, does that count as like a classical remix? Like, so it's the regular Bach fugue, but then Texu has written stuff to work in there. Is that how it works in the symphonic world, to remix something?
As remix goes in like the classical music world, I think yes, Texu has done something like that. Since remixes don't happen very much in classical music world, we're kind of boring. But Texu. It's interesting because I think a lot of artists and performers have been kind of putting new pieces side by side with Bach that really, is inspired by Bach and is, again, conversing with Bach. And Texu, he wrote 2 movements. As I'm playing 2 movements of Bach, he also wrote 2 movements. And the first movement is going to actually follow my Adagio of Bach. I'll perform the Adagio, and then Texu's first movement will happen afterwards. And then his second movement, he actually he wrote it to be in the fugue. So the fugue itself is actually divided up into 3 parts, but there's like a major moment in the middle of it where there's this big finish, a cadence that happens. And he wrote the second movement to be played right in the middle of that. So it was an interesting experience for me because I've been working so hard at relearning and restudying the fugue because it is a very big piece for the violin. And then after spending a lot of time on it and kind of, mapping out what my narrative will be for the fugue, Texu sends me this piece and then he's like, play this in the middle of the fugue. So I had to kind of almost relearn the fugue with the kind of narrative that he has for his piece, because I had to now make a narrative that encompassed, it held his music inside the Bach's music. So It's
So
been
it's
an
less like a
interesting.
remix and more like Rogue One in between the prequels to Star Wars and then the original Star Wars movies.
There it
falls
is.
right in the
Always
Yes,
middle
a
and
with
Star
the
Wars
narrative.
I've been
reference.
rewatching the Andor series,
Always.
so I
I love
totally understand
Andor.
what you're.
So
Always
good.
a Star Wars reference.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
But it seems like,
Yeah.
Texu, your work actually does remix things often. I was watching videos of your fanfare and listening to segments from America Beautiful, and there's definitely motifs that you pick up on that you riff on in really interesting, often funny ways. So, what is it like to, I don't want to use the word remix because it's not that, but like to take these contexts that are much more familiar and just kind of blow them apart?
That came with my early career as an arranger. So before I became more fully a composer, well, because nobody wanted to play my music, unknown person, who is that person? But there was a big need among my friends to want to play some pieces that are not necessarily written for them. For example, folk music or commercial music that is not necessarily written for classical instrument, and they wanted me to arrange for them, and that's how I became interested in taking existing music and make my own turn with it. So this is one of them in a way, but it's a lot heavier this time because it's Bach. Bach is a revered composer. Whenever you deal with Bach, unless you just completely shatter it, and especially this is not just about a Bach festival, it comes with a baggage. And that made me think, what do I even have to do with Bach? Why is Asian Arts Center supporting Bach Festival? How does it work? So that was a big question actually to me. This one is a little extended in terms of my approach. It's not just an arrangement of Bach. I do use the beginning melody of the fugue, C major fugue, which I love, but because of the subjects we are dealing with, I went it a little too far. So how is Bach related to any other tradition? Because when we developed this idea with Hyeyung and Michael, we talked about diaspora, which is great, and Asian diaspora in particular, and how is it related to Bach? But I'm that kind of person who would say yes to all the challenges my clients would give. That's my arranger hat, because they would come up with this interesting idea, and I would say, yes, that's going to be fun. It was fun, but a lot more challenging than usual because Asian diaspora is really far from Bach. But how is it related? And I had to go all the way back to basically origin of music. Where is this note come from? So my answer is it comes from breathing. Any music would come from breathing. So it's the common denominator. So that's where the first movement begins. But also the second movement, which interjects there with Bach's, within the Bach's fugue, is about all the other potential hypothetical offsprings of the same musical ideas. It could go so many different ways. In a way, it's just variations at the same time or arrangements of the same thing, but it came with a little heavy meaning to those things, that those abandoned offsprings, because something has become more mainstream.
Vijay Iyer, you're premiering a work at this festival too. I have a note in our set of questions that just says "Don't fangirl," because I saw you at I saw you at Big Ears. You were one of the acts I was most excited to see. I've been following your jazz work for a while, and now with the Love and Exile trio, it's even more interesting. But I'm really curious what you're premiering in Amherst on Sunday.
Thanks. Thanks for your kind words. I'm glad you were able to. I'm not sure which groups you heard. I did 3 different concerts at Big Ears.
I know.
She was leaving to go to the festival, and she was bookmarking where you were going to be at the different places to make sure she could see you multiple times. So she's not lying at all.
So I saw your classical work for the first time, which was really cool.
Great.
But I also saw the Love and Exile trio. Like, it was really wonderful the whole time. But that line between jazz and classical that I think your work really treads well is something that I'm excited to see maybe in this premiere. Maybe it doesn't do that at all, but like, talk about what you're premiering.
Thanks. And thanks again. That's so kind. I'm honored. I'm really glad to be a part of this event. You know, when I've been given prompts of this kind a number of times. I think it's kind of in a way, almost a cliche that composers have to deal with somehow, like articulating their relationship to the past and to like Europe's past in particular. Like, I've done like a companion piece to Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. I did an overture to the Bach C major cello suite. I did one of the pieces you saw me, the Parker Quartet play of mine was like finishing an unfinished fragment of Mozart's. I did like a variation based on a theme by Robert Schumann. Like, you know, it's a lot of, I get invited or commissioned to do a lot of work that's commenting on the past, to the point where I think I've worked that out for myself in a way that's like, I don't feel like I need to always honor that or really make that as plain anymore. I think enough has been said about Bach that I'm not here to say more, to add to the pile of like adulation. You know, a lot of the language of, I studied his work. In fact, my first instrument was violin, and I grew up playing some of the works that Hyeyung is going to perform. So I am intimately familiar with that language. And then also, like, I remember when I was learning harmony when I was 11 or 12, studying music theory and analyzing the Bach chorales. Like, that became the foundation for me of how I understand counterpoint and harmony. So that is to say that I feel like it's already in the mix enough that I'm not going to like put a big accent on it, you know. So what this piece is it's a tribute to somebody else who has nothing to do with with Bach or with European history or with classical music. His name is Ambedkar, and he was one of the most prominent anti-caste activists in India in the 20th century. And so this is a piece called Plinth, Plinth, for Ambedkar, basically honoring his legacy as an anti-caste activist and an ardent, someone who really changed South Asian history in that way and put that idea in the foreground, influenced many, many generations, both of people in oppressed castes and others who wish to support their struggle. So it's about that. And I'm sure that somewhere in it is something about counterpoint, something about that strain of voice leading that I kind of internalized from studying Bach, but it's not about him. I hope that's okay.
So if not Western canon, who and what is now inspiring these 3 symphonic musicians from Asia? Coming up, more with Vijay Iyer, Hyeyung Sol Yoon, and Texu Kim from the performance Codemakers, a collaboration with the UMass Bach Festival this past weekend.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM. Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. Later in the show, what are the 5 colleges up to in regards to climate change and carbon neutrality? We'll talk with sustainability directors from 4 of the 5 colleges.
Right now, more with Vijay Iyer, Hyeyung Sol Yoon, and Texu Kim about their performance Codemakers, part of the UMass Bach Festival this past weekend.
A thing that I've noticed across all of your work is the emergence of the influence of various Asian diasporas in some of the work that you're making now or that you're working with now. That seems like a natural progression to me, was it?
Well, I can certainly say in my case that it's something that I came to as an adult. I've been an adult for a long time. So like, yeah, in my early 20s, which is more than half my life ago, was when I really wanted to come to terms with that. After studied a lot of Western classical music, I had tried to get a handle on jazz at that point, like in Black music and, you know, Black American music, Afro-diasporic music of all kinds. And it's still an ongoing, lifelong pursuit for me, being a part of that world. but then like for me being who I am and being a part of like coming of age and trying to become an artist, and be who I am in public in a way that is then like it often is just the first thing that someone asks me or the first thing that someone mentions when they write about me is that. So then like if I had no relationship to it, it would still be attributed to me. So then I just made it my business to try to make sense of it on my own terms, and not necessarily to the point of like trying to represent South Asia in my work, but rather to get to the point where I could work with musicians who carry those traditions. Tabla players, mridangam players, veena players, vocalists. And so that's kind of where then like I had to sort of study some of the rhythmic science and rhythmic spiritual science of those traditions, and then a lot of the melodic virtuosity and that kind of like intensely spiritual body of knowledge. And then of course for me the portal to that was both John and Alice Coltrane, who worked a lot with similar ideas, and the way that transformed their music and became a central element in John Coltrane's late music and in Alice Coltrane's subsequent artistic life in the 60s, 70s, and beyond. So a lot of different kind of ingredients there, but I think it was mainly about, for me, just trying to center myself as an artist in the world.
Hyeyung, you've incorporated some of Korean folk music into your work as well. Was that maybe a part of wanting to work with Texu for a commissioned piece for you to do? Or was it
Sure.
strictly breaking apart Bach?
Yeah. As Vijay was talking about all his influences, I was thinking also about just influences of Korean folk music in my consciousness and just inspiration. And actually, I mean, my father introduced me to Korean folk music when I was quite young because they listened to it. And I don't know if I've been away from Korea for a long time. I came to the United States when I was 7 years old. And I think that because of immigration and because of being, kind of separated from my homeland, my motherland, I was always kind of obsessed with anything that had to do with Asian culture or Korean culture. And I think that one of the things I could hold on to was this kind of love for Korean culture that my parents introduced me to, and especially the music part, because Korean music is actually really awesome. It's really amazing. It's like earthy and just so rock and roll at times, and it's just so awesome. So I grew up listening to it, but I never really got to engage in it in our artistic way, except to listen and to enjoy, because there was no room to do that. I went to Juilliard where it was very Eurocentric, obviously, and it probably still is. There was no room for me to kind of explore that love with my teachers, my mentors. And I think that kind of journey started after I left college, after, I became an adult, actually much, much later. So I actually happened upon Texas music because I was actually, I was looking for Korean composers, because I wanted to just play more and just find out what's going on there. And a few years back, I happened upon this video of one of his works that incorporated pansori, which is a specific type of Korean singing, very guttural, and it's like a one woman or one man opera for 4 hours, like a single person singing.
Late at night, it is dark and in the street. There is nobody.
And I think they practice by, trying to sing in front of a waterfall, trying to get their sound across to, that sound barrier, which is kind of amazing. And he Texu this piece, I was totally enthralled by it. It was like so awesome. And he used pansori, the sounds of pansori, with Western style instruments, and I just love how it kind of all blended together. So I've been kind of listening to all his recordings and trying to learn more about his music, and I've been loving listening to his music. So I finally got a chance to work with him this way. Yeah, in terms of like using Korean folk music and my own music, because I do dabble in composing a little bit. It's kind of at an exploratory stage, and I've been trying to actually garner more knowledge, taking some lessons from beloved Korean folk and traditional music people surround me, and taking some trips to Korea to go to different folk performances, shaman rituals, and things like that. So that's been really interesting to experience. So yeah, I'll stop there.
We've been talking a lot about Bach, and no disparagements to UMass for wanting to put on this big Bach festival, but I've been thinking about it a lot in like Shakespeare. Like, we are continuing to do the works of this one white dude from 400 years ago from England. If you had your way, each of you, who would you like to see a more expanded deep dive into a festival in a place like UMass in your world, in the music that you're most interested in? Perhaps it's unfair a question to put you on the spot with, but if you had to pick, like, not a Bach festival, but a blank festival, who would it be? You have to answer it first, Vijay Iyer.
I would choose Thelonious Monk, Nina Simone, and Abida Perveen, who's a great Qawwali vocalist from Pakistan.
I love it. What about you, Hyeyung?
Okay, I feel good. I don't have any ideas right now. I'm so sorry.
There's nobody that you're like binge listening to, that you're just like in such a like I can't stop listening to this person. They're so great. They deserve a whole festival, and I can't wait to go play their music.
I mean, there's so many. I feel like I would love to. I haven't played Vijay's music before, but I would love to play more Vijay's music in the future. Yeah, put a festival of Vijay's music.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That's so sweet.
Yeah,
There's a lot of it, and it's really varied. So that would be a very interesting festival. Texu, do you have a person?
Oh, so you hear me?
Yes.
My go-to for something, a festival based on one person. My go-to, whenever I do any interview like this, I have to pick one Western composer. In that case, I would go for Ravel. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I don't think it has to be a Western composer. There are so many different traditions, and actually, I think that's even fairer to celebrate different traditions every year, because there are just so many people and so many traditions. So one year it could be Festival of. Now I'm actually digging in Korean traditional music. It's odd to say. I grew up with Korean music a little bit, but I had to relearn it when I relocate myself to the States. I'm relearning about the depth and then how it's really distinct from all the other traditions I have been exposed to. So why not celebrating actual Asian music in Asian Arts Center? And if I wanted to be particular, there is shamanistic music called Gut. If you haven't heard about it, please check it out. That's a beautiful music, and it's ritual, but also it's interspersed with our life.
Thank you, everybody, for taking some time for us today and being really amenable.
This Saturday was Earth Day. What are the 5 colleges up to in regards to climate change and carbon neutrality? We'll talk with Beth Hooker, Director of Sustainability at Smith, Ezra Small, Campus Sustainability Manager at UMass, Weston Dripps, Amherst College Director of Sustainability, and Sara, Draper, Sustainability Manager at Hampshire.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Khalees Smith.
Saturday was Earth Day, and we didn't have a show. So since every day is Earth Day, today is also Earth Day here in the Fabulous 413, and we wanted to figure out what our colleges are up to in the area. So joining us to talk about sustainability and what's going on the college campuses are Ezra Small, Campus Sustainability Manager at UMass, Sara Draper, Sustainability Manager at Hampshire, Beth Hooker, Director of Sustainability at Smith, as well as Carolyn McDaniel, Director of Media Relations from Smith, who organized all of these people, and Weston Dripps from Amherst College, the Director of Sustainability.
There's so many people in this studio right now.
Yes. We moved into a new studio
Almost
last week.
Almost as many as when we had that giant pile of children last week.
Wait till we have the Young at Heart chorus in here. We're really going to push the envelope. Yeah, because, carpooling is important. So we're studio pooling. We get people all together. You're also part of the New England College Renewable Partnership, a first-of-its-kind collaborative purchaser of solar energy for New England higher education. So these are the kind of things that we want to hear about, what you're up to in the 5 colleges as directors. So let's start with you, Weston Dripps, Amherst College's Director of Sustainability. What are some of the things that you're working on at Amherst College that you're particularly proud of here to share with our listeners?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us on the show, for sure. I've been in my role only for a year, so I'm the newbie of the group here. I'm excited to share that about a month ago, we actually broke ground on the large-scale transformation of our campus energy system. So we have been, like many of our peer institutions here, been on steam system based on fossil fuel and are undergoing this massive transition, probably one of the biggest capital projects actually in Amherst College history in this capacity, and really excited about that. And I know the other colleges you'll hear about are doing much the same. So we're in the process of putting in some low temperature hot water infrastructure with the goal of adding some geothermal along the way, with the opening up the door for us to move to renewable electricity to kind of help run the whole system. So a massive transformation.
Does low temperature hot water mean that if you take a shower at Amherst, you have to take it at a lower temperature, or is this a means of being sustainable in regards to generating energy?
That's a great question. No,
because if I'm signing up to go to Amherst College, and you're like, there's low temperature hot water here, I'm going to be like, man, I don't know, maybe Williams it is.
Well, if you think about it in terms of, there are different ways that you can move energy around. So we've been using steam as a mechanism, but that requires a ton of energy to do so. And so this new system is much, much more efficient, and it'll allow us to actually, I think, benefit from the efficiencies, but also, again, allow this transformation in terms of the source of our power to run the whole system, which is great.
You don't have to use a dollar figure if you don't want to, but what type of investment does this mean for Amherst College in regards to, you said it's one of the biggest infrastructure investments that the college has ever done? Yeah,
I mean, these don't come with a small sticker price. My colleagues can attest to that as well. But I do think, it's north of $100 million in terms of these types of projects. So when I say big, I mean big.
Yeah.
The exciting thing is, though, I think it's provided us an opportunity. We're not nibbling around the edges. We're not making a bad system a little less bad. I think each of us are really taking a systems look and saying, we're going to radically change how our whole campus energy system actually works. And I think that's a testament to our administrations, our supporters, and others in terms of really bringing about real change, I would say, in terms of just kind of, again, nibbling around the edges or kind of making it a little bit more efficient here, a little bit more efficient. This is a radical overhaul of our entire energy grids.
And part of that price tag, too, is you start seeing the return on it kind of immediately once we've made the shift into something that is more efficient, too. So even though it seems like a lot, and it seems like a lot because it is upfront, but in the long run, both in terms of what it's going to end up costing the school and the state, that's you start seeing a lot better things in the end, I feel like.
Absolutely. And again, our steam systems are probably a little bit antiquated. They have a high sticker price to maintain and support and sustain them. So it's not like suddenly there's this brand new project. I mean, we were going to have to be investing in the old system to upgrade it. And so making this transition, to your point, is, yes, it has a high capital cost, but we are also higher ed institutions that hope to be around a long time. So it's not like we're flipping a house, right, in terms of trying to get our return immediately. And so I think
not to mention how embarrassing that's going to be to try and explain to your students in 2070, oh, yeah, we have this. We decided to be a museum in terms of energy for reasons we can't really explain. But, you'll get into it later.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we can be in it for the long haul, unlike maybe other residential projects or even corporate projects. It's like we want to be around for another couple hundred years. We've been around for a couple hundred years. We hope to continue that, so we can be in it for the 50-year payback or even more.
That's Weston Dripps, who's Amherst College's Director of Sustainability. Let's move on to Beth Hooker, who's the Director of Sustainability at Smith. What are some of the things that Smith has in store for sustainability going on right now?
Well, thanks for having us, and thanks for having an extended Earth Day celebration. As you know, Earth Day is every day for for us is the work that we do. And it was great to hear Weston talk about what they're doing at Amherst College at Smith. We're actually entering our second year of our geothermal energy project. Our Board of Trustees last year approved our largest capital project. Our price tag is $215 million. So kind of, a sticker shock looking at that. But, this year we're moving on to year 2 in a 6-year project, transformation of our energy systems. And we're going to have a lot of geo drilling this summer, and looking forward to seeing how our neighbors are really excited about that, but also working with our campus constituency on some really cool projects, including one that we just had last Friday. We partnered with our Wordle Center for Leadership last fall on an
Your what center?
Wordle.
Okay, so
not
the
Wordle.
not the online,
No,
the word game.
although
Okay.
if you have, it's a 5-letter word. Right.
Yes. I won't tell you what word my child starts with.
Right.
New England Public Media would not be appreciative
No.
of it. But anyway, continue.
So
Sorry.
we partnered with the Wordle Center for Leadership on their Amplify Art competition, and there were 20 submissions for students to really interpret the geothermal project and our goal to be carbon neutral by 2030 through art. And over 20 students submitted. We had a panel of alums and artists who looked at them. We had 3 finalists, and on Friday we actually installed those. We had them blown up to go on the fencing around where the geofields are going, and they look amazing. They're probably about 4 by 8, and art sort of interpretations of what we're doing on campus.
So I think all of your campuses are moving towards geothermal, but what does that actually like? And these are big projects, but I don't think anybody really necessarily understands what goes into the conversion from steam or from whatever system to a geothermal system. You have to drill, but what else happens?
And how far do you have to drill?
Yeah.
Right. So our engineers actually know. So that's good. And so we're feeling pretty good about that. So we have at Smith, we have 3 different districts, and there'll be geofield in each of the districts that we have, and then there'll be energy centers that have heat pumps. So you probably have a heat pump in your house. You might have a refrigerator or an air conditioner, for example. Those are examples of heat pumps, or you've transitioned to heat pump in your house, mini splits. And then we'll do a low temperature hot water transformation of that into all the buildings. So in our case, our geofield this year will be 70 wells in this area that's north of Route 9 or Elm Street, as we call it in Northampton. And those will go down 800 feet. And that's based on modeling, based on the kind of geology that's there. So last summer, our faculty geologists were so excited because they got to see, what's the geology down there?
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm excited. The rocks down there must be unbelievable.
They really are. And we also have a research site at our field station, our field house, and we have a lot of research going on there. So it's, ongoing research in those places.
That's Beth Hooker, who's the Director of Sustainability at Smith. And you mentioned, and I don't know if this was facetious, that your neighbors would be excited about how much geothermal is going on. Was that facetious because there's going to be so much drilling? Or is there a benefit with Smith going geothermal to the greater Northampton community surrounding that area?
Yeah, that's a great question. And certainly it's going to be a little bit loud, but transformations like this, there is a cost in terms of what goes on, and we've modeled how loud it will be because, as I said, last year we did a test well, so we have that well in hand. But we're 10% of the city of Northampton's carbon footprint, and so by our doing this, we're reducing our own on-campus emissions by 90%, and therefore we'll be reducing the town of Northampton's emissions. So they'll be able to meet their climate goals, which are set for 2050. Our climate goal is set for 2030. And the other piece is, both at Smith and at Amherst and at UMass, there are power plants there. And so once we move off fossil fuel, then the air quality is going to be better for the region as well.
That's Beth Hooker, Director of Sustainability at Smith. Let's move over to Sara Draper, who's the Sustainability Manager at Hampshire. What's Hampshire got going on when it comes to sustainability issues, and what are you working on and most excited about?
Oh, what a fun question. And also, just thanks for inviting us all at the same time. We do also hang out outside of work about work-related things, but it's fun to be able to be here with all these fun friends.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks. So our Hampshire's big announcement, and the thing that I'm excited about this year, is that we were able to reach carbon neutrality for both the energy that we use on campus, our electrical energy, for the fossil fuels that we're still using on campus, where we do still have natural gas heating, and for our kind of indirect admissions. So thinking about things like people commuting to campus, or the travel that our admissions folks do when they go out to get New Hampshire kids. So that was definitely a huge thing. That's something that we first put into our climate action plan in 2012. So, carbon neutral by 2022. And I just started this role specifically. I've been at Hampshire for a while, but moved into this sustainability role about a year ago. And my first order of business was, well, I wonder how we did since 2012, because we had a bit of a gap where we weren't really running the numbers year to year. So I sort of just went in with curiosity to do our carbon impact, looking at the data that we have on all the pieces of our carbon impact. And I was very pleasantly and excitedly surprised to see that, hey, we did what we said we were going to do. And a huge piece of that for us has been solar energy. So we have a lot of different solar arrays on campus on individual buildings. We also have these two big ground mount solar arrays that we have in partnership with Tesla, formerly Solar City. It was nice working with those guys when they were still Solar City. Now
you've got a Tesla.
Fine.
Fine is a word.
Yeah, fine is a word. Hopefully it doesn't rapidly and suddenly disincorporate or whatever happened with Tesla over the weekend.
Yeah, we try
involves
really
NDAs.
hard for that not to happen.
Yes.
So it's nice to have a bunch of different examples of solar energy on campus. We have students that are able to go and use those two huge solar arrays to do studies, which otherwise they'd have to be going elsewhere for, and it can be a little challenging to get research permission to go poke around in a solar field. I think my favorite piece that I am personally most excited about is our living building, the RW Kern Center, and that's only partially because I used to work at the architecture firm that designed it.
You want to shout them out because they do. Is this the one where the Hitchcock Center is located as well? I've been there and visited that building. It is remarkable to see.
Thank you. Yeah, so the architects were Brunner Cott and Associates. They're from Cambridge. They're awesome. Thanks for also bragging that we have two living buildings on our campus, both the Kern Center and the Hitchcock Center.
Yes.
But if you
for those who don't know what a living building is, can you explain that a little bit?
I will. I'll give the briefest.
It's not scary like Baba Yaga. It's like on chicken legs or anything like that.
We do collaborate with bacteria to do our building processes, though. So in that sense, it's a little bit living.
Yeah, a little bit.
So living building is basically a really sustainable building. Some of the things that includes at the Kern Center are things like composting toilets, which use no drinking water to move your poop around, unlike regular toilets.
I know.
Which is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous when most of the world does not have access to clean drinking water, and we literally poop in clean drinking water in this country all the time.
It's the most ridiculous thing. We also have, we treat our own gray water in the building. Plants actually treat that gray water. They take up nutrients and eat it up for us and turn it into things that we can put back out on the site. We're also growing some of our own food, and of course, we were producing all of our own energy. So that building is net zero energy.
I love this too because Amherst and Smith are well endowed, and Hampshire was on the cusp of going out of business, but it's still an important and pivotal piece of the puzzle to the point where you've invested in it to the level where you're now carbon neutral, even as we speak, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing that I find exciting about being at Hampshire is what we can do is innovate and be an example and figure out what we can say yes to. So one of the things that we do have a lot of is land. So we can use that land to grow food locally on our campus farm, and we can use that land to put in land conservation. We have some forest in conservation restriction, and we can use that land to produce solar for our neighbors and ourselves.
That is Sara Draper, the Sustainability Manager at Hampshire. We've got one more college represented here with UMass and Ezra Small, who's the Campus Sustainability Manager at UMass. Ezra Small representing the largest college in regards to this, and I'm assuming with the largest impact in regards to, CO2 and all the other emissions that adding to greenhouse gas. So tell us a little bit, Ezra, about what UMass is up to.
That's right. So you'd probably be interested in knowing that UMass Amherst is responsible for about 20% of the state's carbon emissions in the state portfolio. So all the state facilities across the whole Commonwealth, we're 20% of that.
That's
so,
unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
UMass Amherst, not the UMass system.
Just UMass Amherst.
20% of all state carbon emissions.
Right. And so if you've been on campus, you would know that we operate like a small city, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have 13 million square feet of building space. We have 26 miles of steam lines under the ground. And so when you ask, what does this energy transition look like? At UMass, it is really hard to wrap your heads around it. So we've actually a lot of people have been working really hard, even predating the big Chancellor Subbaswamy announcement of UMass Carbon Zero 2032 carbon neutrality goal, which he announced last Earth Day in 2022. But even before that, a lot of people on campus have been coming together to figure out, how do we do this, right? And so we've put together a plan, this UMass Carbon Zero plan, that basically is a lot like what my colleagues here have talked about. It's relying on this formula of low temperature hot water, decarbonizing our campus energy system by moving away from steam, which allows you to move away from fossil fuels, right? And electrifying your campus. But you need heat pumps for that. You need geothermal wells. So we've actually we've dug 5 test wells around campus. And the first one was over our Boyden athletic fields, which is where we plan to put our big well field, which is actually going to be about 600 wells. So everything is bigger at UMass, right? And even just those 600 wells, we're going to be able to get only about 20% of our buildings on that low temperature hot water system. So that's just a district, pretty much the west side of our campus. And then we have to figure out how to do all the other parts of campus.
Wow.
But things happen so fast at UMass, right? And so, for example, we just had a groundbreaking today for a sustainable engineering lab that is going to be built in probably within 2 years.
I just got the press release while we were sitting here during this. Yeah,
so that's really exciting, because that's where our Wind Energy Center is going to live. That's where our Energy Transition Institute is going to live. And there's just so much amazing stuff going on research-wise and curricular-wise at UMass. And so this will be a hub for all of the energy transition work, and for all the great minds to come together and figure out this transition, not just for UMass, but for the whole Commonwealth, for the whole region, for the whole country, and the whole world. So we're really excited about that. But these buildings need to be built, right? And so we have this goal, but now we're adding new buildings and new energy needs. So it's really hard as this train keeps moving to try to say, okay, stop. Let's make sure these new buildings are going to sort of plug and play into this new system once we put it in. So that's where we are. Like Beth at Hampshire, we're going to be about 800 feet deep, and really, the scale of it and the responsibility of it also comes great opportunity. So we actually also developed a learning lab committee and a learning lab team that is looking at all the learning opportunities that come along with this energy transition, right? For every discipline. I mean, you can think of not just engineering students, right, and engineering faculty, but I mean, think about the way that we talk about this, the way that we communicate about this. So journalism and communications, I mean, the list goes on, all the humanities. So it's not just about, the operational side of it. It's about the how we communicate it, how we talk about it, how we all the humanities around it. The arts is really important. We have this arts and activism collaboration with our Fine Arts Center, the Brommery Center, just doing amazing events throughout the year around climate change and different cultures that are impacted right now, and bringing those cultures and giving them a voice. So so much going on at UMass.
Intersectionality is key.
Yes. I love it. And it's happening on college campuses, it seems to be the best place, because people are going there to try to change the future. And all of these opportunities that these 4 of the 5 colleges represented are presenting are, it's great for these students that are going there. Well, coming up in just a little bit, we're going to hear more about the New England College Renewable Partnership, which is a first of its time collective purchaser of solar. We're talking with 4 of the 5 sustainability directors from 4 of the 5 colleges You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We're sitting here with 4 folks involved in sustainability in some of the 5 colleges. Ezra Small from UMass, Weston Dripps of Amherst College, Sara Draper from Hampshire, and Beth Hooker from Smith, as well as Karen McDaniel lurking in the corner over here.
Who helped corral all of these people in one place, which is we're really grateful for. And I was mentioning before, we were talking about the New England College Renewable Partnership, which is the first of its kind solar purchasing group for higher ed. 2 of the people here were involved in those conversations, or at least one of them was. 3 of the 4 colleges represented here are part of that partnership. But I think it makes the most sense for you, Beth Hooker, from Smith, to talk about what that's all about, because you were there as this was being negotiated.
Right. So this was actually in 2010. I think there was something called a Blue Sky Brainstorm across all 5 colleges, just to look at what could we do together collaboratively, for sustainability. And one of the ideas was, why don't we just get solar together? And that was, sort of put on the table. And then at some point, a couple of the presidents picked it up. So President McCartney at Smith and President Jonathan Lash were like, hey, maybe this could be kind of a cool project. And so fast forward, a number of years from that. Amherst, Smith College, Hampshire, I have to count them. Williams College, also in the 413, and then Bowdoin College. We all went together in a collaborative purchase of solar, identified a project in Farmington, Maine, where we each get certain portions of our electricity from. So Smith gets 30% of our electricity load from that project. Williams gets something like 70%. Amherst gets about 50%. And Hampshire is involved in terms of purchasing 40% renewable, 4%. 4%.
But you have your own solar farm, so
This was bonus.
This is part of the bonus package.
I want to make the worst joke.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
When a series of colleges love sustainability very much, they get together and they have a solar baby.
I love it. Solar Babies was such a great movie. Anyway.
It's not a good movie anyway.
I don't know how it holds up. I haven't watched it since the 80s.
We'll use that.
Yeah.
Solar
So
Babies.
our solar baby is this one, and it's just a great project that we're all able to be part of. And as we move forward with electrifying our campuses, we have to identify other projects like that. So thinking about renewable solar or wind or other kinds of projects. So we're all kind of looking at those as well.
And we're not trying to ostracize UMass. It's just a little bit more complicated when it comes to the state in regards to being able to purchase these things.
Because
we
you
were at
are
the
kind
table,
of a
and that's-
city.
Right, and that's actually the Blue Sky initiative that Beth mentioned. That was actually our first thing that we collaborated on about more than 10 years ago. So that was really cool. And all these great ideas came out of it. And one of the ideas that came out of it was also on-campus solar. So since 2013, UMass has built about 7 megawatts of solar parking canopies. So, instead of compromising our green space, we're just looking at how can our concrete be turned into these sort of green energy power plants. So we're just building solar canopies all over campus.
I've parked under those solar canopies many times.
Same.
Nice.
Yeah, they come in real handy. Well, a huge thank you, again, first of all, to Carolyn McDaniel from Smith for organizing everybody, but to Ezra Small, the campus sustainability manager at UMass, Sara Draper, the sustainability manager at Hampshire, Beth Hooker, the director of sustainability at Smith, and Weston Dripps, Amherst College's director of sustainability, for telling us what's been going on in at least 4 of the 5 colleges. We'll get you soon, Mount Holyoke, to hear what's going on in this week, the Monday after Earth Day. Tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, how fast is Western Mass losing farmland? We'll talk with Chelsea Gazillo, American Farmland Trust's New England policy manager.
Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid on science versus tradition when it comes to moon gazing and the end of Ramadan.
Sorry we had to bump you to Tuesday, Dr. Hamid. Damani Gordon from Genuine Culture LLC on the Native Tongues Tribute at White Lion this weekend, and NEPM's Jill Kaufman on an innovative program teaching guitar behind bars in Franklin County.
Our director is Tony Yuan. Who on the show now? Done.
Our engineer is Betsy. Is it Monday Cordis?
Our technical team is Bart bringing extra coffee, Rank and Kara, moving truck ground coordinator Foster, and punk rock Dubé.
Musical thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, The Brass, Vijay Iyer, Hyeyung Sol Yoon, Texu Kim Homebody, and Louis Armstrong. I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. See you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.